Hello, beautiful people. This is Theory 4, 20th Century Techniques, and this is the third and final video in the Melody series. So we are going to be talking about synthetic, whole tone, and octatonic scales. First of all, when we say synthetic, that just means everything else. It's the term that we use to refer to all other scales, which includes pretty much anything that you can dream up. For example, you could build a scale that's Lydian on the bottom and Mixolydian on the top. This is sometimes called the Lydian dominant scale or the overtone scale. One interesting thing about it is when you look at every other note in this scale, you get two interlocking dominant seventh chords, C, E, G, B flat, and D, F sharp, A, C. Likewise, you can create a scale that's Phrygian on the bottom and Dorian on the top. Now here's one that's a little more exotic. It has a lowered second but a major third, and then the top half is taken from the harmonic minor scale, G, A flat, B, C. That sounds like this. You'll hear this scale a lot in klezmer music, which is a traditional form of Jewish music. Klezmer features instruments like trombone, violin, and clarinet. So if you play one of those and you've never heard of klezmer, look it up. I think you'll like it a lot. And finally, remember that you can make up any scale that you can think of, and you can use any scale to create new harmonic patterns as well. Let's move on to the whole tone scale. And the whole tone scale is exactly what it sounds like. It's a scale that proceeds upwards in whole steps. Because every note in the scale is the same distance apart, that means there are no half steps. That means you can't make a leading tone to anything. So this scale doesn't really have a beginning or an end because there's no sense of resolution. For example, if we wanted to start the scale on D instead of C, we would get all of the same notes. The same is true of E. And F sharp, and so on. So you can think of the whole tone scale as having no beginning and no end, and excuse me, let's try that again. So it can go in either direction to infinity and beyond. Now that's really all you need to know about the whole tone scale, but here are some nerdy things that you might enjoy knowing. First of all, the only thirds present in a whole tone scale are major thirds. Every third is a major third, and that's because to make a minor third, you need a whole step plus a half step, and we don't have any half steps in this scale. So as a result, the only triads in the scale are augmented triads. In this case, we have C, E, G sharp, and then the other notes are D, F sharp, and A sharp. What's more, there are only two whole tone scales in the universe, and they are mutually exclusive. So the first one here, we'll call it whole tone scale 1. That starts on C and goes up 6 notes. And it repeats forever with those same 6 notes. The other scale, which we'll call whole tone scale number 2, that starts on D flat, or we could call it C sharp, and it goes up 6 notes and repeats forever. Etc. So these two scales, they don't have any tones in common. They each have 6 tones, and so if you add them together, you get all 12 notes of the octave. The last scale we're going to talk about today is the octatonic scale. Octa implies 8 of something, and the octatonic scale is in fact an 8-note scale that alternates half and whole steps. And remember that we are counting 8 notes, not including the repeated do at the top. So this is all you really need to know about the octatonic scale, alternating half steps and whole steps. The rest of the stuff is a little nerdy, but also really cool. I'm going to talk about some of the mathematical and musical properties of this scale. So like the whole tone scale, the octatonic scale gives us a repeating pattern that can go on forever. And that pattern is half whole, etc. Now a half step plus a whole step makes a minor third. So if you look at every other note in the scale, you will get a stack of minor thirds that adds up to a fully diminished 7th chord. In this case, it's C, E flat, F sharp, A. Now, enharmonic spellings don't matter, so if it helps, you can think of this as C, E flat, G flat, B double flat, but it's a diminished 7th chord nonetheless. Now, if we start from the D flat, we get another stack of minor thirds and another fully diminished 7th chord. Just like the whole tone scale, there are a limited number of octatonic scales. There are 3. Octatonic scale number 1 is the scale we've already learned. It starts on C and proceeds by half step and then whole step. And because the pattern repeats, you could start the scale on E flat and get all the same notes as the scale that starts on C. The same is true of starting on F sharp. We would get all the same notes, and the same is true of A. Octatonic scale number 2 also starts on C, but it starts with a whole step and then a half step. And again, because the pattern repeats, you can start the scale on C or E flat and get the same thing, or start on F sharp and get the same thing, or start on A and get all the same notes. The third octatonic scale does not have a C in it. It starts on C sharp and proceeds by half step and then whole step. At the top of the scale here, you'll see that there's a whole step between B and C sharp, and that's why there's no C in the scale. Again, the scale repeats at the minor third, so if you start on C sharp, or you start on E, or G, or A sharp, you'll always get the same scale. Another way to look at this is that each octatonic scale is a combination of 2 fully diminished 7th chords. So the first one has C fully diminished and C sharp fully diminished, or a D flat in this case. The second one is built on C fully diminished and D fully diminished. And the third one is built on C sharp diminished and D diminished. So if this seems confusing to you at all, just go to the piano or go to your instrument and play around with this. Just experiment with these scales and you'll see what I mean. If you're still confused, drop a question in the comments on YouTube. But remember, when in doubt, just look for a pattern of alternating half and whole steps, and that's an octatonic scale. That's all from me for now. Thanks for watching. Next, go to the piano or go to your instrument and play around with some of these scales. Have fun and experiment. Just play with the new sounds that you've learned. After you've watched all of the videos, please complete quiz number 1. That is on the transition page. And as I record this, it's not up there yet, but it will be soon. I will be sure to let you know when it's available. Next week, we will start down the road of 20th century harmony. Until then, take care and stay safe. Bye.